Last Thursday, I went out to watch both Barbie and Oppenheimer to participate in the Barbenheimer experience, which is something that only a true soldier can do. I barely survived, and here are my reviews for the movies that I just watched. Enjoy. Barbie. Directed by Greta Gerwig, whose past works involve Little Women and Lady Bird, created this truly unique blockbuster that utilizes its ridiculous concept to spread its messages of feminism and self-identity. First off, I have to go off on how fabulous that set design is. I mean, Barbie Land looks like an absolute joy to be a part of in terms of aesthetic and genuinely intriguing world building. The costume design constantly goes hard, and the choreography has tons of effort put in that you'll truly be able to appreciate. The amount of references they're able to make with the costume design and world is so cool, even to someone who doesn't know anything about Barbie. They make it apparent while being self-aware about it. The references and plot do make me think that this movie is feeding off of some sort of nostalgia, but it's not too in your face about it. The basic plot of the fish out of water story, or a person entering the world outside the bubble, reminds me a lot of the types of movies that I would see as a kid, except it's not one of those basic bitch blockbusters that just ride off of the fact, but really add to it with how off the wall bonkers they go with it. I think that by that fact alone, this makes Barbie one of the most unique blockbusters of the summer. I'll get into why later. The writing may not be its strongest suit, but the way it fluently works with the humor makes up for that fact. I also appreciate how ridiculous and out there the humor is, and how it always has some meaning to the world building or characters involved, or to the themes and messaging overall. It's not just ridiculous to be ridiculous. It always has some point to it. I also love how they play around with stereotypes and cliches. It absolutely celebrates those while making fun of it in a way that doesn't feel counterproductive. It's not one of those movies that are self-aware to a fault while playing with it. I feel like it's both appreciating and criticizing of itself in a way that feels balanced, which is honestly really crazy for a blockbuster about one of the biggest brands ever. Because the way that they just let Greta make whatever she wanted to make is truly so inspiring. I mean, you can absolutely see that with how deep these monologues go. Like, a lot of them go in depth about the themes of the movie, and knowing how the producers wanted to take an important interaction out of the movie tells me that she probably had to fight for those as well. Which is why I feel like this is one of the more unique blockbusters that you'll ever see, because of how free it is. I've also never seen such perfect casting in a movie in such a long time, because Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling, and Michael Cera flawlessly played the characters like they were born to play them. America Ferrera was also one who did a pretty good job with her having one of my favorite moments of the movie. Ryan Gosling's music number was also incredibly fun and unserious in the best way possible. His character development throughout the movie was so intriguing to watch, as it is a commentary on toxic masculinity and how men find it hard to define the true meaning of what it is to be a man. The way they play on this without being too direct while still being fun is truly ingenious. The commentary on women was also handled pretty well, with some of my favorite moments coming from the interactions between Kate McKinnon and Margot Robbie. Margot Robbie really plays that unawareness level to such a funny degree, while Kate McKinnon's wackiness plays so well off of it. The soundtrack or album was filled with tons of bops, and that's all you really need for a movie like this, let's be honest here. I enjoyed how Lizzo got to have a bit in this movie that genuinely had a chuckle out of me. The only problem that I would consider in this movie is the real world bits, because they don't really hit as much as the stuff in Barbie Land. Like, I enjoy what happened as soon as Barbie and Ken entered the real world, but the stuff with Will Ferrell's character felt a bit hit or miss, as the characters in the corporation building are trying to reach the same levels of ridiculousness as the characters in Barbie Land, which felt weird considering every other real world thing felt somewhat grounded. And sometimes it just felt like an SNL sketch, and that's not the best thing to be reminded of. Overall, Barbie is such a fun time that will not only make you think, but it will make you want to become Barbie herself. Because Barbie slays Oppenheimer. Well, this was such a dark contrast to Barbie. Jesus Christ. I'm glad I took like a really long break, because this was just one of those experiences that I'll never forget. There are just so many elements that really made this watch special for me, including going into the IMAX showing, which is where a lot of my enjoyment came from. This enjoyment obviously comes from the visual aspect matched with the audio design that would truly dazzle you while making you feel every vibration possible. But there's a lot more than just the visual aspect, which we'll get to later in this review. Oppenheimer, directed by Christopher Nolan, starring Cillian Murphy as the man who is considered as the father of Nobel winners. This film is a character study slash biopic that leans heavily on the moral dilemma that comes from creating this bomb in the first place, with some of that Nolan pizzazz he usually likes to give out in his movies. Nolan himself is an evil man with how unnerving this movie makes you feel, with this intense dialogue and this soundtrack that is perfectly used. The IMAX experience is truly unique in the way that it's used against you, I feel like. Like I said before, the way you'll feel and hear every single vibration possible from Oppenheimer's thoughts of atoms breaking apart to the actual explosion of the first nuclear bomb itself. And it's just jaw-droppingly entrancing. There's also this surprising psychological horror aspect that makes this movie so intriguing to watch, and it makes a ton of sense regarding the ethical dilemmas Oppenheimer goes through during this movie. Like, watching his visions of the future are so disturbing and well done to where it's genuinely beautiful in how frightening it is. Cillian Murphy goes hard with his disturbed facial reactions and vocal tone to express how devastated he feels from what he has done. Like, the movie doesn't show him to be some kind of hero, but something a lot more complicated that the movie thoroughly explores. Also, the explosions in this movie are no joke. I mean, yeah, the movie about the father of Nobel is going to have Nobel, yeah, no shit, but I would have never realized or expected how loud that would have been to actually watch one go off in the movie, because it's just hard to imagine. But when it happens, it's truly a marvel. I mean, it's terrifying, but it's awesome and truly remarkable in terms of filmmaking. And keyword on the filmmaking aspect, I don't think it's awesome that the explosion happened. I just think the filmmaking aspect is really, really cool, okay? I don't want people thinking that my main take from this movie is that I think the explosions are awesome. Anyways, the amount of effort put into the scenes before and during make it such a magnetic watch. Like, you really feel a part of this event because of how significant that explosion is. Like, you know how insane it's going to be, and the movie tells you this with the heavy audio design, but nothing truly will prepare you for that final explosion. The acting in this movie really adds so much to this unnerving factor, with many great performances from Cillian Murphy, Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt, Dane DeHaan, and many others. Like, this star-studded cast really brought in their A game for this movie, and shout out to Roderick for being in this masterpiece as well. He was the reason why I think this is one of my favorite movies of the year. The writing very much reminded me of Tar, with how I didn't understand much of what was going on because of like the terminology and like smart people words being used. But the movie is just built in a way where you don't really need to know. And also, Oppenheimer as a character also doesn't know a lot either. So yeah, you also already know the stakes or concept of what's going on based off of the performances alone. I'm still able to gather enough information to figure out where we are with the movie in terms of the events that are going on. The movie is split into multiple different sections that are not chronological and shipped throughout this movie, which would add more confusion, but I think they did an excellent job at deciphering which time period we are with the makeup and setting. The pacing is really fast and never lingers whatsoever. No filler or any breathing room for that matter, which is surprising for a movie that is 3 hours long. Every scene is designed to have some significance to the characterization of Oppenheimer or the historical information that is expressed throughout the story. The nuclear site being my favorite set and the one that had my heart pumping constantly. Everything that went into the design of the bomb to the aftermath had me constantly engaged and terrified at how loud those explosions were going to be. Like I said, there's a psychological horror aspect to the movie, and there was one genuine jump scare in this movie that I thought was done very well and had a huge impact because of how it added to Oppenheimer as a character in terms of how he feels about the significance of this work in particular. A lot of the writing is connected to Oppenheimer's perspective, which means we see everything from his come up to his relationships with other people to the trials we went on after the bomb was created, which adds a lot to his very complicated and multifaceted character. Nolan is just able to unravel him in a way that will keep you engaged, which is very important for a dialogue heavy movie like this. Robert Downey Jr. being my second favorite performance, where he is just really able to captivate you by making you wonder what his true intentions are. Once again, shout out to that script and direction because it really makes him give the performance of a lifetime. The only semi-issue I have with this movie is the audio. Once again, a no shit, like it's coming from Nolan. If you watch Tenet, you understand that Nolan, when it comes to Nolan, he really makes his audio, he makes the audio design very intricate. But in this movie, it's a bit too intricate at times, with it being hard to hear characters at points. Like mainly in big hallways where the vocals are echoey, but like I said before, the performances including facial reactions kept me able to process the things that the movie wanted me to know. It's also genuinely hard to recommend this movie to people because it's a biopic and biopics are usually boring. I don't really like biopics, but this one absolutely deserves a watch. With how much of a fresh breath of air it is, with this whole new trend of constant biopics every year. Keep in mind, it's a very dialogue-heavy movie, and it mainly focuses on Oppenheimer's struggles with his morals and sometimes, yes, it's visually pleasing, but keep in mind that a lot of this movie, a very majority part of this movie is about conversations and arguments, which may not be as compelling to some people. So overall, the Barbenheimer experience, how would I rate it? I would rate it to be one of my favorite experiences in cinema because it truly was. Watching two very great movies on the same day felt invigorating, and I hope that one day we get a new... Oh, what's that? We are getting a new one? What are the movies going to... Oh.